Why did you just click this video? Is it to satisfy the craving of what is unknown? Was it the bald head? In the wild, the way that animals survive can be observed, hypothesized, and studied. In contrast, modern human civilizations are just so overstimulated that they typically don't move past the observation phase or even the hypothesis stage. What I mean by this is that we tend to spend the majority of our time consuming and less of our time applying and doing. Naturally, humans have the tendency to want to move towards the path of least resistance. This is like a physics concept with like current and stuff. Before you actually click this video, you actually had less than a millisecond to think about doing something else. However, clicking this video was the most efficient, straightforward, and quickest way for your brain to alleviate any kind of boredom. It was essentially a no-brainer, so it made complete sense for you to move forward this way. To kind of move forward with my point, I want to kind of bring up a concept known as natural selection. So natural selection is the process where organisms that are better adapted to their environment are more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on their genetic traits. And you may have studied this concept to just pass your class. However, if you take the time to actually think about this concept, you can actually apply it to fields such as sociology and politics. In the 19th century, there was a concept brought up called social Darwinism. And social Darwinism argues, as society advances, the strongest tend to survive through survival of the fittest. Essentially, if you're broke, your likelihood of kind of surviving and passing down your genes and moving forward, etc., are kind of lower than somebody who's a little bit higher on the socioeconomic status. However, like many decent human beings out there, I don't really believe in this concept. I wasn't really raised to think that way as well. In fact, I would argue that the beliefs surrounding social Darwinism dictate the government, they dictate politics, they also dictate how businesses are ran. Why am I actually bringing this up? I'm taking the hat off for this one. It is extremely important to acknowledge the kind of world that we live in, not the one that we want it to be. And acknowledging the kind of world that we live in requires us to adapt and think and actually use our heads. And these skills, adapting and thinking and just using your head, are intentionally weakened by short videos, entertainment, essentially momentary pleasures. Additionally, individuals tend to promote bad habits and they gatekeep a lot of knowledge from another individual so that they stay stuck in square one and they continue to reap the benefits and move forward. What this does, it discourages growth and discourages an individual's curiosity to want to advance and think and use it. So like the animal kingdom, we still use things like strength and stealth to kind of secure our prey. However, humans are unique in that they have the ability to plan ahead, record their thoughts, and most importantly, manipulate. If you actually take the time to think about it, we are the greatest point of reference for understanding our psychology. However, we're being conditioned every day by watching videos, consuming content. We're being distracted by fast food content that ultimately benefits another person. This is survival of the fittest. This is literally natural selection. So, okay, cool. We understand this now. Now what? Well, what is the solution to all of this? You know, everybody's life is different and there's no one size kind of fits all. However, I think a really good starting point is to kind of look at the things that you've been conditioned and habituated to do. More specifically, it's important to kind of look at what comes easy for you to do and what's very hard for you to do. That kind of gives you a rough estimate as to where your habits lie. If you want to take some time to think about it, I would physically write this stuff down. I wouldn't do it on your phone because your phone has apps. And if you kind of start stressing about your thoughts, you might switch over and watch some TikToks or some YouTube shorts to kind of alleviate self-reflection, which is a painful process in and of itself. We're really bound to have our attentions distracted and kind of taken away from us. By physically writing down your thoughts, you're actively engaging with every word that comes out, and you're essentially kind of playing a tug of war with your mind. By actively kind of writing stuff down, you actually take the time to ensure that your thoughts are translated the way that they are in your head, and you get to see things a little bit more clearer. You might have taken a class that required you to write like a 10-page paper on a book that you didn't care about. And I understand like kind of doing stuff like that, you know, it kind of ruins writing for a lot of people. But when you actually take a moment to think about the skills that you acquired from writing this stuff down, it really teaches you to engage with your thoughts, and it teaches you patience, which is something that is being phased out in this world the more we offer convenient solutions to individuals. So don't lose that skill, guys. That skill is what's gonna help us kind of move forward and grow and be innovative. This is literally your weapon to be innovative. You know, I've had my fair share of bad habits for like 10 years of my life. I played a game called RuneScape for like over 10 hours a day. I'd wake up, get on the computer, play that game, level up my character, get to it, repeat. So the game itself was kind of there for me during some pretty difficult times. You know, personally, it became literally my whole world. It became my reality. Not this, the game itself was my reality. You know, I can go on about the game for hours, but the biggest takeaway I want to share about how I kind of transitioned from consuming that all the time to kind of doing something else was I actually took the time to eliminate everything that tied me to that game. This included selling all of my gold and my computer and some of my possessions that I spent a lot of time kind of collecting. And you know, as I say these words, I remember the panic and the anxiety that I felt when I sold all my gold. I sold all of the things that I collected over the years. I just got rid of everything on my character. And I just felt very hopeless and lost and confused and anxious when I did all that. And I mean, honestly, in hindsight, this might have been a really extreme way to kind of break a bad habit. However, fundamentally, if you want to get rid of a bad habit, you got to make it very difficult to engage with the cues that instigate that bad habit to begin with, that create that craving. It's super important to make the things that you don't want to do a lot more harder to engage with them. Oh, you're eating a lot of junk food? Don't have it in the house. Oh, you can go and buy it anyway? Give your wallet to somebody else and tell them not to give it back to you. And instead, have something to kind of fulfill that kind of need, that craving. So instead of buying a Snickers, go get yourself an apple. Ever wondered why some of these like chocolate commercials had like this slang of like, oh, you're hungry, just have this, you know? I'm not trying to get sued for saying names, but it's because they know how to kind of build those habits into you. They know how to get you to come back. You start associating, oh, I'm hungry. The way to satiate my hunger is to get what they're telling me to get. And your brain just starts to incorporate that over time. When you eat this stuff, it makes your brain release certain chemicals that make you feel good and make you want it back in the future. Because again, we're simple creatures by nature. Our brains want us to go back and get the easiest thing that gives us pleasure. Come on, guys. Now look, if there's one thing that I want to leave for this video is I don't want you to underestimate your susceptibility to manipulation. I'm going to repeat it again. Do not underestimate your susceptibility to manipulation. Repeat that over and over until you understand what I'm saying. If it sounds difficult to comprehend the stuff that I'm saying, please take a moment to write it down. Study it in your head. Rehearse it in your head. Dissect the words that I'm saying, even if it's difficult. Within the last 200 years, society has advanced tremendously. However, our biology has barely caught up to the advances of life. Heck, our psychology and physiology are literally like lacking significantly. Like if you look back at like the ancient humans, we're literally not too different from them back then. It's just now we live in a more advanced society. More specifically, a society that values immediate kind of rewards instead of really long distance rewards. So our brains are just certainly like kind of craving that instantaneous dopamine, that instantaneous entertainment. And we don't kind of plant the seed and protect the plant while it's growing. Something like that. Heck, America is literally 250 years old, dude. Like, it's relatively young, dude. We got people who are like 100 years old that are still alive. Like, dude, it's kind of crazy. I need you to understand your bad habits. I need you to understand your weaknesses. Take the time to educate yourself. Read. Engage in difficult kind of content, but not too difficult that you're going to demotivate yourself. Just find the more stimulating content that will keep you engaged just long enough to challenge yourself and just build from there. You don't have to be perfect the first time. You just got to take little steps to help promote better habits than today. Heck, I'm in a car. It's hot as hell outside. And this car doesn't even work. But I wanted to record this video because I wanted to do this. And was it difficult to sit down and compose my thoughts? Yes. But is it rewarding? Yes, it has its own sense of rewards for sure. But also don't like be too like boastful if you do something for yourself that's good. You know, we can get caught up by achieving certain things that we forget all the hard work that we put in the process to get what we need, what we got, okay? And so we think that it just comes automatically. It doesn't. It takes a lot of hard work to kind of do the things that you need to do. And it's a continuous thing. There's not an easy way to do things. It gets easier with time and it gets more efficient with time. But at the end of the day, it gets boring and it gets tiring. And we need to be able to entertain ourselves through the boredom. Go for walks. Talk to yourself about very challenging topics. Write them down. Expand your knowledge, because the world literally does not want you to expand your knowledge. They do not want you to win. You need to be the one to make better decisions for yourself and your family in the future, because nobody else is going to do it but you. And I'm not trying to place a burden on y'all. I'm right there with y'all. I got a lot of things I need to work on, and I got a lot of things that I got to continually adapt to. The fact is, we got to hold ourselves accountable to the things that we need to change, because they're not going to change. We need to take the time to be patient. So don't be afraid to go against your own coding when necessary, because sometimes doing so will help you advance. Anywho, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching this video. You know, if you learned something, if you have any thoughts, feel free to share them in the comments. And just get out of there. You know, if you got to sell your computer, that's what I did recently. So once you're done with this video, go out for a walk. You know, go look at some trees if you're in an area that has some trees, and maybe look at a squirrel if you got a squirrel or two, and just kind of be with your thoughts. Understand what makes you you, okay? Because we all got a little something we can contribute to this world, and that contribution will allow us to be able to find where we belong, and allows us to kind of act in the way that we're meant to act, okay? So take care of yourself, be more in touch with your inner child. Best wishes out there. Take care, guys.